The air in my small apartment was still thick with the smell of yesterday's turpentine and the faint sweet scent of oil paints, a familiar comfort. But that morning, all I could feel was a knot tightening in my chest, a strange mix of excitement and pure, unadulterated terror. I saw my life savings disappear from my bank account just hours before I was supposed to sign the lease on my dream, the old firehouse downtown that I was going to turn into a community arts center. $115,000 gone. I'm Dana. I've been an art teacher at the local high school for 15 years, lived a quiet life, saved every spare penny. I used to believe that if you worked hard enough, lived modestly, and gave generously, family would always protect you. That's what we were taught, what I held on to. But sometimes, family is the first to break you, the very first to teach you that some promises are just words. I thought the worst part was losing the money, watching that number on the screen shrink to almost nothing. But no, what truly broke me, what cracked something deep inside, was watching my own parents choose the wrong daughter to protect, the wrong life to salvage. And that was a different kind of devastation. That morning, the sun was just beginning to spill over the rooftops of our small northern Ohio town, painting the old brick buildings in a soft, hopeful light. I remember the precise shade of gold it cast on my worn wooden floors. I'd woken up early, too keyed up to sleep. The lease signing for the old firehouse on Elm Street was at 10 a.m. For over a decade, that building, that dream, had been my North Star. I'd made my coffee, a ritual, the bitter aroma usually a comfort, but today it just sat heavy in my stomach. I sat at my small kitchen table, the one I'd found at a thrift store and lovingly restored, and I opened my laptop, just a final check of the account, a silly little habit, like counting your blessings before they hatch. The bank's website loaded slowly, the little wheels spinning, and I took a breath, picturing the high ceilings of the firehouse, the way the light would pour through those tall arched windows, the rows of easels I'd set up for the kids. Then the page refreshed, and I stared. The balance. It wasn't just low, it was decimated. A number so small it felt like a cruel joke. My heart lurched, a physical thud against my ribs. No, this had to be a mistake, a glitch in the system. Banks made errors, right? My hands were shaking as I clicked on transaction history. My breath caught. Withdrawal, withdrawal, withdrawal. 3 large sums, all dated the previous day, all transferred to names I didn't recognize, but they had the distinct, ugly ring of online gambling sites. Quick, successive gut punches. $115,000. Gone, siphoned out. My mind raced, a frantic, panicked sprint, trying to make sense of it. Hacked? Was I hacked? But the security questions, the two-factor authentication, and then a cold dread seeped into me, chilling me from the inside out, more potent than any Ohio winter. There was only one other person who had the password to that account. Just one. My younger sister, Amber. Years ago, when she was just starting out, struggling a bit, I'd given it to her in case of an emergency, if she needed to help me pay a bill while I was on a rare, short trip, or if something happened to me. It was an act of trust, of sisterly solidarity. We were family. She couldn't, but the names of those sites, they echoed something I'd vaguely heard my parents whispering about, a concern about Amber's habits, her tendency to chase quick fixes. I dismissed it. Amber was flighty, sometimes irresponsible, but not this, not theft, not from me. The coffee grew cold in my mug. The golden light outside suddenly seemed harsh, accusatory. The silence in my apartment was deafening, broken only by the frantic thumping of my own heart. I scrolled again as if seeing it a second, third, fourth time would somehow change the digital ink on the screen. But the numbers remained, stark and unyielding. Each zero felt like a judgment, each transaction a separate betrayal. The dream of the art center, the excited faces of the kids I'd imagined, the smell of clay and paint in those big, airy rooms. It all just dissolved, evaporated into the sterile glow of the laptop screen. I felt a wave of nausea so profound I had to grip the edge of the table. It wasn't just the money, it was the years, the sacrifice, the trust, and the sickening, creeping realization that something truly irreversible had just happened, something that would alter the landscape of my life and my family forever. The lease signing was in less than 3 hours, and the money, my life's careful work, was gone, stolen by my own sister. The weight of those 10 years pressed down on me suddenly with an almost physical force. A decade. It sounds like such a long time when you say it like that. But it had passed in a blur of packed lunches, mended clothes, and carefully budgeted groceries. I remember my colleagues at the high school, kind people, sometimes gently teasing me about my old car, a beat-up sedan that coughed more than it purred. "Dana, when are you going to treat yourself?" they'd ask. And I'd just smile, a little wistfully perhaps, and say, "Soon." But soon was always tied to the art center. Every penny I didn't spend on a newer car, on a vacation I told myself I didn't need, on little luxuries that seemed frivolous, went into that dedicated savings account. The Firehouse Fund, I'd nicknamed it in my head. It wasn't just about having a building. It was about creating a space where kids who didn't fit neatly into boxes could find their voice. Kids like some of my students at the public high school, the ones who sat in the back of the class, doodling in their notebooks, convinced no one saw their talent, their quiet struggles. I saw them. I was one of them once. Art had saved me, given me an outlet, a way to make sense of the world. I wanted to give that gift to others, especially in our small town, where opportunities for creative expression were few and far between, especially for families who couldn't afford private lessons or expensive supplies. The old firehouse on Elm Street was perfect. I'd walked past it hundreds of times, its red brick faded, its windows boarded up, but I could see its potential. I'd even made sketches, late at night, imagining the layout: a pottery studio in the back where the trucks used to be, a gallery space in the front, classrooms upstairs filled with light. It was more than a dream. It was a purpose. And Amber knew all of this. She was my younger sister, 5 years my junior. Growing up, we'd been close, or so I thought, sharing secrets, borrowing clothes, the usual sisterly things. I was the responsible one, the quiet, steady older sister. She was the charming one, the one who could talk her way into and out of anything, the one our parents seemed to dote on, perhaps because she always seemed to need a little more managing. When I first told her about the art center idea years ago, her eyes had lit up. "That's amazing, Dana. You'd be so good at that," she'd said. And I believed her. I believed in her support. The password. It was such a mundane thing at the time. I was going to a teacher's conference out of state for a few days, and a small, unexpected bill for some art supplies I'd ordered for my classroom was due. I didn't have online banking set up on my phone back then. I was always a bit of a Luddite. So I'd written down the password for my main checking account, the one I used for everyday things, and asked her if she could just log in and pay that one bill for me. "Of course, no problem," she'd said, tucking the little slip of paper into her wallet. The savings account, the Firehouse Fund, was linked for easy transfers to it, but I never imagined money going out unless I moved it. After I got back, I'd simply forgotten to change the password. Life got busy. Years passed. It was Amber. Why would I need to change it? Family protects each other. That was the refrain of our childhood, a mantra our mother repeated endlessly. Now, sitting in my silent kitchen, that phrase echoed with a mocking hollowness. The careful budgeting, the extra shifts I'd taken chaperoning school dances or helping with theater sets to earn a little more, the constant quiet deferral of my own needs, it all felt so foolish, so naive. I'd built a dream on a foundation of sacrifice, and that foundation had been dynamited by the one person I thought, I truly believed, understood its worth. The guilt was a sharp, sudden ache. Guilt for being so trusting. Guilt for not seeing whatever it was I should have seen in Amber. Guilt for letting that password hang out there in the ether between us for so long. The agony wasn't just about the empty bank account. It was the gaping hole where a decade of hope and hard work had been. It was the sudden, brutal understanding that my dream hadn't just collapsed, it had been pushed. And the hand that pushed it belonged to my sister. The drive to my parents' house felt like moving through thick water. My hands were clammy on the steering wheel of my old coughing car. Amber still lived with them, in her old bedroom, even though she was well into her 30s. It was always explained away as saving money or helping out mom and dad, but I think deep down, we all knew it was because she'd never quite managed to launch herself successfully into adult life. I parked on the quiet suburban street, the familiar maple trees lining the sidewalk, already tinged with the first hints of autumn. I took a deep breath, trying to gather some semblance of the calm, patient Dana everyone knew. But inside, a storm was raging. Outrage, disbelief, a raw, bleeding wound. I didn't knock. I just walked in. The house smelled of coffee and my mother's rose-scented air freshener. They were in the living room, Mom, Dad, and Amber, sitting around the television, a morning game show blaring. They looked up, surprised to see me on a weekday morning. Amber's smile faltered a little when she saw my face. I think she knew. Or maybe it was just guilt, a constant companion for her. Dana, what's wrong, honey? You look like you've seen a ghost, Mom said, her voice laced with that familiar, slightly anxious concern. I couldn't look at her, not yet. My eyes found Amber. The money, Amber, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, though it felt like it was coming from someone else. All of it, from my savings account. Amber's face went pale, then flushed a blotchy red. She avoided my gaze, staring at a spot on the carpet. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? I pressed, a cold anger starting to rise, pushing past the shock. $115,000, Amber, transferred to 3 different gambling websites yesterday. My entire savings for the art center. You were the only other person with the password. Silence. Thick, suffocating silence. My dad shifted uncomfortably in his armchair. My mom's hand went to her mouth. Amber finally looked up, a strange mix of defiance and fear in her eyes. Okay, fine, she mumbled, her voice barely a whisper. I took it, but I was going to double it for you, Dana. I found this amazing system. It was a sure thing. I wanted to surprise you, give you even more for your project. Double it for me. The words hung in the air, so absurd, so utterly disconnected from the reality of what she'd done, that for a moment I was speechless. The sheer breathtaking selfishness of it. Double it? I finally managed, my voice rising despite myself. Amber, you gambled away 10 years of my life. My dream, the art center, was supposed to have its lease signed this morning. How could you possibly think that was okay? That's when she said it. The words that would echo in my mind for months, years, maybe forever. She shrugged, a small, dismissive gesture. Oh, come on, Dana. It's just money. You can always make more. Just money? I felt something inside me snap. All the years of being the patient, understanding older sister, the one who smoothed things over, the one who never made waves, it all just shattered. It was never just money to me, Amber. It was everything. It was a future for those kids. It was my entire life's work. I turned to my parents, my voice pleading, desperate for them to see, to understand, to validate the enormity of this betrayal. Mom, Dad, do you hear this? She stole everything from me. My mother wrung her hands, her face a mask of distress. Oh, Dana, honey, I'm sure she didn't mean it like that. Amber, apologize to your sister. Tell her you're sorry. Amber mumbled a sullen, sorry. It was meaningless. My father cleared his throat. He looked old suddenly, tired. Dana, she made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but she's your sister. We can't let this destroy the family. Maybe there's a way we can all help you recoup some of it over time. Recoup some of it over time, as if it were a spilled cup of coffee, not the wholesale destruction of a decade's meticulous planning and sacrifice. They weren't angry at her. They were managing the situation, protecting Amber. Again, the realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. They weren't going to back me. They were going to circle the wagons around her. The wrong daughter. My outrage morphed into a cold, desolate feeling of abandonment. The living room, usually so familiar and comforting, suddenly felt like the coldest place on earth. This wasn't just Amber's betrayal anymore. This was theirs too. And in that moment, I knew with a chilling certainty that I was utterly, completely alone in this. The emotional separation, it began right there in that sunny living room with the game show still muttering forgotten in the background. I walked out of their house without another word. The air outside felt cleaner, sharper, but the coldness I'd felt in that living room, it clung to me. For the rest of that day, I moved in a daze. I called the realtor, my voice flat, to cancel the lease signing. I didn't offer an explanation. I couldn't. The disappointment in his voice was just another small cut. I sat in my quiet apartment, the sketches of the art center scattered on my table like fallen leaves, each one a reminder of what was lost. But beneath the shock and the grief, something else was beginning to stir, a flicker of resolve. They thought it was just money. They thought I would just absorb this, forgive and forget, to keep the peace, to protect Amber. They underestimated me. They always had. The next morning, I woke up with a strange clarity. The emotional fog had lifted, replaced by a steely, quiet determination. I wasn't going to let this go. It wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. It was about the fact that what Amber did wasn't just a mistake. It was a crime. And it wasn't just my money she'd gambled away. It was trust. It was years of my life. It was a community's potential. I spent the day methodically gathering evidence. I printed out the bank statements, highlighting the fraudulent transfers. I took screenshots of the transaction details, the names of those predatory websites, stark and undeniable. Each click of the mouse, each printout, felt like a small act of reclaiming myself. I wasn't the weeping, pleading Dana from my parents' living room anymore. I was someone else now, someone I was just beginning to meet. The walk to the police station was the hardest part. Our town is small. Everyone knows everyone, or at least knows of them. Filing a report against my own sister, it felt like a monumental, irreversible step. The station was quiet, smelling of old paper and disinfectant. I sat across a desk from a tired-looking officer, a man named Peterson, whose kids I thought I might have taught years ago. I laid out the printouts, my voice calm and factual, as I explained what had happened. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I just stated the facts. He listened patiently, his expression unreadable. He asked a few questions, his tone professional, but not unkind. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "This is a significant amount, Ms. Whitmore, and family disputes, they're always tough." He paused. "We'll investigate this thoroughly." I walked out of the police station feeling strangely lighter, as if a burden I hadn't even realized I was carrying had been set down. The decision was made. The wheels were in motion. There was no going back. Later that evening, the call came. It was Officer Peterson. They had reviewed the evidence, corroborated the transfers. Amber had been arrested. He said it very matter-of-factly. Arrested. My sister. I hung up the phone, my hand trembling slightly. There was no triumph, no satisfaction, just a deep, hollow ache. It wasn't long before I heard the pounding on my apartment door. I knew who it would be. I opened it to find my parents, their faces contorted with fury and disbelief. My mother's eyes were redrimmed, my father's jaw tight. "How could you, Dana?" my mother cried, her voice raw. "How could you do this to your own sister, to your family?" My father stepped forward, his voice a low growl. "You're destroying her life. She made a mistake, yes, a stupid one. But this, calling the police, having her arrested? She'll have a record. She'll never get a decent job. What were you thinking?" The accusations rained down on me, a hailstorm of guilt and blame. For a moment, the old Dana, the one who craved their approval, who would do anything to avoid conflict, wanted to shrink back, to apologize, to try and fix it. But then I looked at their faces, saw the utter lack of understanding for what I had lost, for the betrayal I had endured, and the new quiet strength held firm. "She destroyed her own life, Dad," I said, my voice soft but unwavering. "She stole $115,000 from me. She stole my dream. That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice she made." "But she's family," my mother sobbed. "Family is supposed to protect each other." "And what about me, Mom?" I asked, the question hanging in the small space of my doorway. Wasn't I family too? Who was protecting me when she emptied my bank account? Who was protecting my dream? They had no answer, just more anger, more pleas for Amber. For the first time in my life, I wasn't asking for their validation. I wasn't seeking their approval. I simply stood my ground. I told them calmly that I had done what I had to do, that the consequences were Amber's to bear. I didn't shout, I didn't argue, I just was. And eventually, seeing they couldn't sway me, they left, their anger and disappointment radiating off them in waves. As I closed the door, I felt a profound sense of loneliness, yes, but also a surprising, quiet strength. The coldest room in town was no longer my parents' living room. It was the space Amber had created with her actions, and the space my parents were now choosing to occupy by defending her. And I, for the first time, was choosing to stand outside of it, in my own truth. The days that followed Amber's arrest were strange, quiet. I went to work at the high school, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy, but the news had inevitably trickled through the small-town grapevine. I could feel the curious glances, hear the hushed whispers in the hallways. Some were sympathetic, I'm sure, but others, I sensed, were judgmental. Airing family dirty laundry in public, as it were. I felt incredibly isolated. My family, the bedrock I'd always believed in, had crumbled. The dream of the art center felt like a ghost, haunting the edges of my thoughts. One evening, staring at the blank walls of my apartment, I felt an almost desperate need to connect, to not feel so utterly alone in this. Hesitantly, I opened my laptop, not to check my no-empty bank account, but to an online forum I sometimes visited, a community for artists and educators. With a deep breath, I started typing. I didn't use my real name or Amber's or specify our town. I just told the story simply and honestly. The years of saving, the dream of the community art center, the betrayal by a close family member, the devastating loss, the painful decision to go to the police, the lack of support from other family. I poured out the hurt, the confusion, the quiet sense of having done the right thing, but feeling so broken by it. I hit post and then immediately wanted to delete it. What was I thinking? Exposing my pain to strangers? But then the comments started to come in. First one, then a few, then dozens, and they weren't judgmental. They were kind, empathetic. People shared their own stories of betrayal, of difficult family situations, of financial hardship caused by loved ones. You are so strong. I'm so sorry this happened to you. You did the right thing. Don't let them make you doubt yourself. Each comment was like a small balm on a raw wound. I wasn't alone. Other people understood. A few days later, I got a private message. It was from a woman who said her screen name was Art Mom PTA. She recognized some of the vaguer details, the passion for an art center for kids in a struggling community, and gently asked if I was, by any chance, the Ms. Whitmore from Northwood High. My heart sank a little. So much for anonymity. But her tone was so kind. I admitted I was. She wrote back immediately. She was a parent of one of my former students, someone I remembered as being very involved in the PTA. She said she'd been so moved by my anonymous post, and now, knowing it was me, she was heartbroken for what I was going through. Then she wrote something that made me stare at the screen in disbelief. Dana, your dream for that art center is too important to let die. Have you ever considered a GoFundMe? A GoFundMe? Me? Asking for charity? The thought made me deeply uncomfortable. I'd always been the giver, the self-sufficient one. But then I thought of the kids, of the empty firehouse, of the years of work Amber had erased in a single day. Art Mom PTA was persistent, in the gentlest way. She said she'd help set it up, share it with her network. People want to help, Dana, she wrote. They just need to know how. With a huge leap of faith, I said yes. She helped me write the story, more publicly this time, but still focusing on the dream, not just the betrayal. We launched it on a Friday evening. I didn't expect much, maybe a few $100s from well-meaning friends. I was wrong. Within hours, it was a few thousand. By the next morning, it was over 10,000. Donations were coming in from current and former students, from parents, from other teachers, from people in town I barely knew, and from complete strangers across the country who'd seen it shared. Art Mom PTA, true to her word, had mobilized her extensive network. Local businesses shared the link. The small town paper picked up the story, framing it as a community rallying around one of its own. Then something incredible happened. A well-known children's author, someone whose books I'd used in my classes for years, someone who lived 2 states away but had apparently seen a repost from a friend of a friend, shared the GoFundMe on her massive social media platform with a personal note about the importance of art for young people. The donations surged. Within a week, we had raised over $250,000. I would sit at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd discovered the theft, and just watch the numbers climb, tears streaming down my face. Not tears of sadness this time, tears of overwhelming gratitude, of shock, of a hope I thought had been extinguished, now roaring back to life, fanned by the kindness of strangers. The validation I hadn't received from my own blood, I was now receiving in spades from people who owed me nothing. It was a profound, humbling, and deeply healing experience. My found family was showing up. The first call I made with the GoFundMe money secured was to the realtor. My voice was steadier this time. "Is the old firehouse on Elm Street still available?" I asked, my heart pounding. He sounded surprised, then pleased. "Dana, yes, as a matter of fact, it is. The other offer fell through." It felt like fate. A week later, I was signing the papers, not for a lease, but for a purchase. The Second Chances Art Center Esoter, as I'd started calling it in my head, was mine. Holding the keys to that old, dilapidated building felt more significant than I could have ever imagined. It wasn't just a building, it was a testament to resilience, to community, to the unexpected ways life can give you back what you thought was lost. The first big cleanup day was a Saturday. I'd put out a call for volunteers, expecting maybe a handful of people. But when I arrived, the street outside the firehouse was bustling. Parents from the school, students, current and former, local shop owners, even the mayor made an appearance, rolling up his sleeves. The energy was incredible. We swept out years of dust and grime, pulled down rotten boards, scraped old paint. Laughter and chatter filled the cavernous space that had once housed fire trucks, and as I stood there, covered in dust, a paintbrush in my hand, I saw her, my mother. She was standing across the street, half hidden by an old oak tree, just watching. She didn't cross. She didn't wave. She just stood there for a long time, a solitary figure, and then she turned and walked away. It was a strange, poignant moment. A door had opened for me, this huge, beautiful door to a new future. But the door to my old family life, it felt like it was slowly, painfully closing. A few days after that, my father called. His voice was subdued, tired. "Dana, can you come over to the house? Your mother and we need to talk to you." I hesitated. I hadn't spoken to them since that awful night at my apartment. But I went. The atmosphere in their living room was heavy, laden with unspoken things. Amber wasn't there. She was out on bail, staying with an aunt in another town, awaiting her court date. My parents looked older, worn down. They sat me down on the sofa, the same sofa where Amber had uttered those devastating words. "It's just money." My father cleared his throat. "Dana," he began, his voice heavy. "Your mother and we've been doing a lot of thinking and a lot of talking. What Amber did, it was wrong, terribly wrong. We see that now." My mother nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "We were so focused on protecting her, on the shame of it all, that we didn't see how much she hurt you, how much she took from you." He paused, then looked me straight in the eye. "We want to make it right, or as right as we can. We've decided to use our retirement fund. We can pay you back the $115,000 she stole." I was stunned. Their retirement fund? That was everything they had. For a moment, a flicker of the old obligation, the old desire to ease their burden, rose up in me. But then he added the condition. "There's just one thing we need you to do, Dana. We need you to talk to the prosecutor. We need you to tell them you don't want to press charges. If you do that, if you help Amber avoid a conviction, we'll give you the money." The air went out of me. It wasn't an apology, it was a transaction. They were still trying to buy Amber's way out of trouble, and they were asking me to be complicit, to say that what she did wasn't serious enough for real consequences. I looked at their anxious, hopeful faces, and I felt a deep, profound sadness, but also a new clarity. "No," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I can't do that." My mother started to cry. "But Dana, her future." "What about my future, Mom?" I asked gently. "The one she tried to destroy? And what about the lesson she needs to learn? This isn't about the money anymore. It stopped being about the money a long time ago. It's about accountability." I told them about the GoFundMe, about the kindness of strangers, about how the art center was already becoming a reality without their retirement funds. I thanked them for the offer, acknowledged the sacrifice it represented for them, but I stood firm. Dropping the charges was not an option. I left their house that day knowing I'd drawn a boundary, perhaps the most important one of my life. It was done with grace, I hoped, but with absolute clarity. One door, the one to my past, was indeed closing, but the one to my future was wide open, and I was walking through it on my own terms. A few weeks later, a letter arrived. It was postmarked from the town where Amber was staying. Her handwriting, a flamboyant, loopy script I'd known all my life, was instantly recognizable on the envelope. My stomach tightened. I opened it with a sense of dread, and I wasn't wrong. It was a torrent of venom, page after page of accusations, of blame. It was my fault she was in this mess. I was jealous of her. I had always been cold and unforgiving. I was destroying the family. There wasn't a single word of remorse, not a hint of apology for what she'd done, just pure, unadulterated rage and self-pity. I read the first page, then part of the second. The words were like acid. I felt a familiar pang, the old hurt, the old desire to somehow make her understand. But then I stopped. What was the point? She didn't want to understand. She only wanted to wound. I folded the letter, walked over to the trash can in my small kitchen, and dropped it in. I didn't need to read anymore. Her words had no power over me anymore. My focus was on the art center. Every day, it was taking shape. The transformation of the old firehouse was astonishing. That student's mom, Art Mom PTA, who'd become a dear friend and a driving force on the volunteer committee, was a whirlwind of organization. She'd marshaled troops of volunteers. Local contractors offered discounted labor and materials. A hardware store donated gallons of paint in bright, cheerful colors. One afternoon, I walked in to find a group of my former students, now in college or starting their careers, painting a huge, vibrant mural on one of the main walls. They designed it themselves, a tree with deep roots and sprawling branches covered in colorful handprints. "It's the community tree, Ms. Whitmore," one of them said, beaming, "symbolizing how we all grow together." Tears pricked my eyes. This was what family really meant. Not just blood, but shared purpose, mutual support, a network of people who chose to show up for each other. The town that had once, perhaps, watched my quiet struggles from a distance or whispered about my family's drama was now standing with me, shoulder to shoulder, building something beautiful out of the ashes of betrayal. The warmth of it, the sheer unselfish generosity, was healing me in ways I hadn't thought possible. It was a quiet renewal, happening one brush stroke, one act of kindness at a time. Amber's bitter letter was just a distant, irrelevant noise. This was real. The day the Second Chances Art Center officially opened its doors was one of those perfect early autumn days. The sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue, and the air was crisp and clean. The old firehouse gleamed, its red brick freshly pointed, the tall arched windows sparkling, revealing the vibrant, welcoming space within. There was a small ribbon-cutting ceremony. The mayor spoke, praising community spirit. Art Mom PTA, or Sarah, as I now knew her, gave a heartfelt speech that made me tear up. Reporters from the local paper and even a regional TV station were there. Kids from the neighborhood, their faces alight with excitement, were already exploring the new pottery studio, their hands itching to get into the clay. I felt a quiet, profound sense of pride, not just in what we had built, but in what it represented. It was a testament to the fact that even from the deepest betrayals, something good, something strong could emerge. During a lull in the festivities, I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. I pulled it out. A text message. It was from my father. Just 3 words. "We should talk." I stared at the message for a long moment. So much unsaid, so much history packed into those 3 little words. A year ago, I would have replied instantly, eager for reconciliation, for a chance to mend the rift. But now things were different. I was different. I didn't feel anger or bitterness, just a kind of calm detachment. I put the phone back in my pocket without replying. Maybe we would talk someday. Maybe not. But it wouldn't be on his terms or out of my old need for their approval. It would be if and when I was ready. Later that afternoon, the first official art class began. A group of middle schoolers, a little shy, a little awkward, sat around a big table, sketchbooks open. I looked at their expectant faces, and my heart swelled. This was it. This was why I'd done all of this. Before we started, I said to them, "You know, this place is called Second Chances, and sometimes we think second chances are about someone else giving them to us. But I've learned something important. Sometimes the most important second chance is the one we give ourselves. The chance to believe in ourselves again, even when things are hard. The chance to build something new, even when something old has been broken." I saw a few of them nod, a flicker of understanding in their eyes. And as I picked up a piece of charcoal and began to show them how to find the light and shadow in a simple, still life, I felt a sense of wholeness, of quiet empowerment I hadn't felt in a very long time. The emotional closure wasn't about forgiveness from others or apologies received. It was about the peace I had found within myself, the strength I had discovered, and the new beginning I had built, not just for myself, but for my community. Sometimes what hurts the most isn't the money that's stolen. It's realizing your own family won't stand beside you when you're drowning. It's the silence when you're screaming inside, the way they look away when you need them to see your pain. That kind of betrayal cuts deeper than any financial loss. But sometimes strangers show up, people you barely know or don't know at all, and they reach out a hand. They don't just offer sympathy, they offer belief. They see your dream even when it's been shattered, and they help you pick up the pieces. They give you more than your blood ever could. They give you back your faith in humanity and in yourself. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, especially by family, I hope this story gives you a little bit of strength. I hope it reminds you that even in the darkest moments, you are not alone, and your worth is not defined by how others treat you. If you see yourself anywhere in this journey, if any part of this resonated with you, please share your story or your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I find so much connection in knowing we're not isolated in these experiences. And if you believe in quiet justice, in the power of second chances, in people finding their way back to dignity and purpose, subscribe to this channel. We have more stories to tell, more voices to share. And if you'd like to help us keep telling them and support the work we do here, you can use the Super Thanks button below. Sometimes giving, even in small ways, is part of healing too. Thank you for listening.